Uh, Jesus did die and rise for all the children. We're the children, didn't he? I like the verse we just listened to. We'll enter his gates with thanksgiving in our hearts. Can you imagine any other way to enter his gates? How could you enter his gates without thanksgiving in your heart? We really enjoy being here. My wife, Susan, Jed, and Leela, y'all heard me talk about them a little bit. I may talk about them a little bit more today. I don't know. We'll see. Get to be with me today, and I'm glad for that. We left family Thanksgiving in Texas and drove by. It's good to be here. I trust all of you have had some good Thanksgiving family time, too. I also trust that not all of it was as good as you would want it to be. There's probably maybe some tension somewhere, maybe a little difficulty. If your family's like most other families, unless y'all are better than ours, I guess. There's a little tension, a little difficulty in there. But it's also really good to see people, to remember to reflect on the things to be thankful for. I'm talking some about gratitude today. And I'm going to say something pretty contentious here at the beginning, and then I'm going to try to explain what I mean. I don't think you can be saved without gratitude. Gratitude is an essential component for salvation. Think about what we just said. Can you imagine entering the gates of heaven without thanksgiving in your heart? How would that even be possible? If you think of something as being a necessary condition for being a citizen of heaven, well, you can't be a citizen of heaven without gratitude in your heart, without thanksgiving. We have to become the kind of people for whom deep gratitude is as natural and easy for us as breathing. You've been around family members. If your family's like mine, you've got some family members for whom that kind of attitude is pretty easy, and some who you love very much, and yet it's difficult for them to practice a spirit of gratitude. Maybe it's hard for you to live your life in a way that is characterized by deep thanksgiving and gratefulness for what you have in your life, for the gifts you've been given. Maybe it's a challenge. The focus of my sermon is, again, on gratitude, but it's not just on gratitude. I want to focus on something that I think is an essential component for gratitude. One of the reasons we have trouble being grateful people is because we have a spirit of anger over things that we thought we were entitled to that we didn't get. We think we deserve things, and we don't get them, and we're mad about it. Right? And that anger and hostility become more pervasive in our life, and it begins to characterize a life full by negative emotions, breaks our relationships and our communities, brings tension to our families, our church families, our real families, our work families, right? I've heard somebody say one time that anger and resentment are poisons that destroy the vessel in which it is stored. How do we become deeply grateful people? Think about some of the people you know. Do you know anybody whose life is characterized by deep gratitude? Right? My granddad, my papaw, he died when he was 92. And I don't think, from hearing stories from my own dad and some of his siblings about what he was like, he was a manager at Sears Roebuck his whole life, and he did not suffer a fool lightly, if you know what I mean. Right? He was a hard man. He began, what's the right word? Mellowing a little later in life, as you see sometimes happen. And he learned to step into joy. Late in his life, he was about 92 years old. His wife had died. He was suffering from so many ailments it's hard to even describe, as he couldn't even leave his room. But we'd go see him. I bet Leland and Jed don't remember it. They were very, very young the last time we saw him. But he was just full of joy and gratitude. He was thankful for his life. My own dad was like that a few years ago, and towards his end, he died of cancer a few years ago. How can we become people? How would you like to be a person whose life is naturally characterized by joy and peace and gratitude, even in the midst of suffering and loss? Even in the midst of sometimes when somebody owed you something and they didn't give it to you, you've been treated wrongly. And yet still, you can be at peace. You can be joyful and content in your life. Maybe you've known some people who can do that. One of the guys who's been really influential on me is a guy named Dallas Willard. His last words were, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this life." You ever just thought about telling God that? Oh, thank you, God. Thank you for making me. Thank you for my parents, my kids. Thank you for the hardships. We'll get through those too. Thank you. Thank you for my breath. Thank you for the taste of this turkey and dressing in the blue skies. Wouldn't you like to be a person for whom gratitude just flowed so naturally from your very soul? That's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to get there in a little different way, though. I'm going to go through the back door. We're going to start with Mark chapter 6, if you want to turn there. I'm going to read there from Mark chapter 6 in a moment. Now, I want to talk for a second about this guy. Who was the guy y'all called Killer earlier? What was his name? Elton? And y'all called him Killer because it was ironic. He didn't at all seem like the kind of guy, right? And so when you heard he was in the Marine Corps and he was a trained, because I guess he was in the Marine Corps, he was a trained killer, right? And so it was like, well, you were surprised. I wasn't expecting that, right? And so the nickname stuck as kind of an ironic thing, right? Is that right? Something like that? All right, keep that in mind. We'll come back to that in a second. It's going to have something to do with what we're getting ready to read. All right, Mark chapter 6. Got to remember to pull my glasses out. I hate this so much. Okay. Jesus left there. Verse 1. Jesus left there and went to his hometown, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. All right, stop there. See that word amazed? That word's going to come up several times in our talk today. Amazed is a good translation. I like the translation surprised, right? And by surprised, I mean like y'all felt when y'all heard this guy was a trained killer. Well, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting something else from Elton. To hear that he's a trained killer from the Marine, I'm surprised by that, right? A surprise is when you're expecting one thing and you get something else, which is why, by the way, I have a pet peeve. So I don't like it when a couple, they're expecting a baby and they go and they take the pictures, or whatever, and you ask them, so a boy or a girl? And they say, well, we didn't ask. We want to be surprised. This is how I feel. I'm sorry, but sometimes I think, really, are you going to be surprised, though? I mean, it's a boy or a girl, right? If somebody were giving you a Christmas present and you knew it was a tie or a hat and you opened it and it was a tie, would you say, wow, I'm surprised? No, because you were expecting a tie or a hat, right? So if you know it's a boy or a girl and the baby's born and it's a boy, that's not a surprise. A surprise is when you're expecting one thing, but you get something else, right? Oh, from everything I know about Elton, he's not going to be a killer. What he is, I'm surprised, right? That's a surprise. If the baby's born and it's a walrus, that's a surprise, right? But if it's a boy or a girl, that's not a surprise. A surprise is when you're expecting one thing, but you get something else. And Jesus goes to his hometown in Nazareth, and they're saying, oh, yeah, I know Jesus. He's the son of Mary and Joseph, and he's a carpenter here. We know what to expect of him. And then they got something else. They were amazed and surprised. How does he talk like this? Next verse. Where did this man get these things? What's this wisdom that has been given him that he even does miracles? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James and Joseph, Judas and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. Sometimes people who have internalized inside themselves a low opinion of their own station in life, when others, even if they're family members or people in their own community, their low station community, seems to enter into a new higher status, makes them feel bad about themselves. Putting on airs, getting too big for your britches. Oh, he thinks he's really something special. When really what's going on is you're feeling pretty ashamed about yourself. You've taken on an opinion that you ain't worth very much. And then when somebody born in your same station seems to be worth a lot, you're thinking to yourself, maybe I'm not much. And that reacts in anger to the person who has done something with himself. And so his hometown, this little, backwater place called Nazareth or Mineral Springs or something like that. But it was like a small little community in the middle of nowhere, right? And they thought to themselves, who is this? We know where he was born. We know who he is. He's taking on airs. Who is this guy? And they took offense at him. And Jesus said, only in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his own house, as a prophet without honor. Now listen to this. This is amazing. He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their lack of faith. Okay, now that passage just screams for discussion. First of all, why couldn't he heal people? Because of their lack of faith? Have you ever wondered about that? That's hard to understand. Can't God? So suppose somebody's legs don't work. Can God make them work? If he wants to, he can. Doesn't really matter what the person thinks about it or not. How is that person believing that Jesus can make their eyes, work or their legs work necessary for Jesus to be able to make their eyes work or their legs work? I remember as a kid, wondering about this. Well, let me give you the short answer. The short answer is it's not. What Jesus is trying to teach us in the physical miracles is not really about the physical miracles. All these people he healed, they all died, including one we're going to read about in a second. None of them live forever. Right? The physical miracles are meant to point to something different, a different kind of miracle that God wants to do in us. And this miracle, the miracle that he's using the physical miracles to point to, is one that requires our trust in him. We'll talk about why it requires it later. But because of that, because these physical miracles are meant to teach something else, one requirement for them is faith from the people who come to him. And they don't have it. And it says he couldn't do any miracles. And then it says, and he was amazed. Jesus was amazed. Jesus was surprised. He went home, he was expecting one thing, and he got something else. You ever think about God being surprised? Like you sneak up on God? Boo, right? Oh, I didn't know you were there, right? How does that work, God being surprised? I don't know exactly, but that's what it says. He was amazed. He was surprised by their lack of faith. By the way, there are only two places in all the gospel where Jesus is said to be amazed or surprised. This is one of them. There's another one we're going to read in a second. Now, there are lots of places in Scripture where people were surprised or amazed by Jesus. That happens a lot. But there are only two places where Jesus was amazed or surprised. And this is one of them. Okay? All right. Let's flip over to the other one. Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7. When Jesus finished saying all these things, given the Sermon on the Mount, he entered Capernaum. There a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, "This man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue." So Jesus went with them. All right, let's stop there. We're going to keep reading. We're not done with that passage. We're going to stop there. Just pay attention to what we got going on. So we're in this little community called Capernaum. I've had the chance to go there, actually. It's really cool. We got to lead some students on an overseas trip class, and one of the places we went was to this ancient city of Capernaum. And actually the building that this Roman centurion built is still there, portions of it, right, with like a plaque, right, some engravings. So we got this Roman centurion. Now, who are the Roman centurions? Well, they're the invading army, right? This is the invading army. This is the oppressor of Israel. And here they are in a little village around the Sea of Galilee called Capernaum. I don't know. They lose their their worship facilities somehow. They need to be. The church burns down, whatever. They need another one. And here's this Roman centurion who helps them build a new one. He builds it for them. This Roman centurion seems like a different kind of Roman centurion, right? We'll come to him in a second. But notice what the elders of the Jews do. So the Roman centurion helps them build a church building. They like him. He seems like a good guy, despite being, again, an officer in the invading army with many soldiers under him. This is a man of authority in the Roman army, on the fringes of the Roman Empire, right? And they like him. And he goes to the leaders of the Jewish leaders, the elders in the community there at Capernaum, and says, "Oh,
this family member of mine. Maybe it's sometimes it's translated as a son, sometimes as a servant. We're unsure exactly there, but mine here translates it as servant. We have this servant who's getting ready to die. He's very sick. Can you go to Jesus and ask him to heal him? So the elders go to Jesus and says, we have someone, a Roman Centurion, who helped build our worship center here, and he has somebody he needs you to heal, and we think you should do it. This man has done a lot for us. He's deserving of your healing him. Now think about what kind of person it would take to tell others, to tell God who's deserving of being healed, right? Any Lonesome Dove fans in here? Anybody seen Lonesome Dove, the movie? Raise your hand if you've seen Lonesome Dove, the movie. All right, there's a few of us. If you haven't, stick with me. I won't talk about it long, I promise. But I love Lonesome Dove. In it, there's a character loosely based on a guy named Charles Goodnight. Charles Goodnight was this pioneering cowboy guy, established the Goodnight Loving Trail, moving cattle west, you know. He was alive during Indians, fought with Indians, you know, that kind of stuff. He was a tough man. He had I don't know what you call him, an employee, a friend, a sidekick, named Bose Ickard. Bose Ickard is a real-life historical person, okay? In the movie, Dietz' character is loosely based on Bose Ickard. Bose Ickard was born a slave in Tennessee. But he was free at a very young age, around 13. He went to Texas, fell in with Goodnight, and his whole life was there, this employee, friend, I don't know what you call it, his relationship with Goodnight. Well, he died. And this is what Charles Goodnight wrote on Bose Ickard's tombstone. You can go to Weatherford, Texas and see it if you want. This is what it says. Served with me for years on the Goodnight loving trail. Never shirked a duty or disobeyed an order. Rode with me in many stampedes. Participated in 3 engagements with Comanches. Splendid behavior. See Goodnight. Now, on one hand, I like this. I love this history. But on the other hand, think about that for a second. Doesn't that almost sound like a recommendation letter to God? Right? Now, I can speak for Mr. Ickard. Splendid behavior. Never shirked a duty, never disobeyed an order, participated in several engagements with the Comanches. This is a good one, God. You should take him. Right? It's something kind of like that is going on with these Jewish elders. Jesus. Let me tell you about this Roman Centurion. I know he's a centurion. You wouldn't expect much of him being an invading army. But actually, he's a pretty good one. He's worth you healing him. He deserves it. The Roman elders are the kind of people who, because of their station in life and in their communities, assume that they're the worthy ones. They're the deserving ones. They're the ones who got it together. They're the ones who are fit to pronounce about the worth of other people. And they think Jesus should take their recommendation under advisement. Now, that's not very surprising to Jesus, that the Jewish elders would have this own attitude about themselves. Nonetheless, he goes with them. Let's keep reading. Oh, actually, before I keep reading, let me say something else about the Roman centurion. So we got the Jewish elders who themselves see themselves as people who are worthy of being healed, people who are deserving, whose recommendation should matter, like Charles Goodnight, to God. Then you got the Roman centurion, and we know what to expect from Roman centurions. I mean, these are men's men. These are guys who are on the edges of the Roman Empire, bringing Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, to these backwater nations, full of the unwashed masses. These are military men. They know how to live under discipline. They get up on time. They make their bed right. They live under orders and command. They know about authority. This guy here, he has at least 100 soldiers under him being a centurion. And if he tells them jump, they jump, because that's the military way of life. They're not like, they know what a lot of people are like. These non-military crowds, whether they're in the backwater nations they go into, they've got no discipline, they've got no order in their life. Or if you were to go back to Rome, to the ruling class, they sit around in their cocktail parties talking about this or that, but they don't know what it's like they rise and fall under the very blanket of protection that I provide, and then question the manner in which I provide it. Y'all know the old, y'all know the movie A Few Good Men? Anyway, this guy, he's a guy that, he knows his own worth. He's worked hard. He's tough. He's disciplined. This is what you expect from a Roman centurion. You don't expect him to be a guy who puts himself under a peasant in the backwater remote area where he's at. No. That's not what you expect from a Roman centurion. Okay, so the Jewish elders go to Jesus and they say, go heal him. All right, let's keep reading. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to him to say, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. Now, this is surprising. The Roman centurion telling this Jewish peasant that he doesn't deserve to have that peasant even come into his house? That's not what you expect from a Roman centurion. Lord, oh, and he calls him Lord. He calls him Lord. Don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. Lord, you ever pray that, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. I don't deserve to have you come under my roof, Lord. That is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But if you'll just say the word, my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and I tell that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. 2 times Jesus is amazed. One time is in his own hometown. He was expecting a certain kind of faith, and he got the opposite. The other time, it was part of the invading Roman army. He was expecting one kind of faith, and he got the opposite. Right? This Roman centurion, contrary to all of our expectations, did not consider himself worthy for a Jewish peasant to even come under his own home. And furthermore, let's just talk about authority. Now, we know what it means, so we get the idea about a military man understanding authority. Let me say something. Lord, I know about authority. I've got people under me. I tell them jump, and they jump. I tell them dig the latrine, they dig the latrine. I tell them put up camp, they put up camp. That's how authority works. What's he saying there? Well, here's what I think he's saying. Jesus, I know you have the authority to heal my servant. You have the power to do that. Jesus, I know you have the authority to heal me. You have the power to do that. And again, remember, that Roman centurion who he healed that day, he eventually died. All these miracles in the New Testament where, people's legs aren't working and they take up their mat and walk, or they can't see and then they can, or they're sick and on the brink of death and they get better again, they all died. All their bodies stopped working. Right? What are we getting at with these miracles? The answer is something deeper. Do you believe that Jesus has the authority to come into your heart and to heal you? You were just with your family over Thanksgiving. I bet not everything was exactly the way you wanted it to be. It was good. You love your family members. But not everything was exactly the way it was what you wanted it to be. Do you believe that Jesus has the authority to heal your family? To fix what is broken? Now, if you think you're entitled to it, then you'll develop this kind of mindset. God, why did you make the world this way? Why does my family have to be the way that it is? Why did you make me the way that I am? Focus on the negative parts about yourself, and you'll wonder why God did this to you, and you'll become bitter and angry. Why did you make me this way, God? On the other hand, if you'll learn to let free of all your entitlement, here's what we've got to remember to develop gratitude. Gratitude, which again is necessary for our salvation. We cannot enter his gates without thanksgiving in our hearts. If you want to be saved, not just from your sin, but if you want to be saved into the kind of life and into the kind of community God wants for you, gratitude is necessary. And if you want to develop gratitude, you've got to drop your sense of entitlement. You do not deserve to have God in your life. You don't deserve him, and neither do I. Think about when you get angry, right? You get angry because you think you were entitled to something and you didn't get it. And maybe you were right. Sometimes we wrong one another, right? You know, we get angry whenever I think, I don't know. I think my sister shouldn't have bumped me when she came by, or I think my brother should have done those clothes earlier, and he didn't, and now I'm mad. I was expecting one thing, I was expecting him to do that, and he should have. And I can't, like I can talk to anybody else. When I get angry is when I'm driving down the road. I think I'm entitled to have people not driving the left lane unless they're passing somebody. Drives me crazy. And then when they don't do it, I think I'm entitled to have you drive a certain way, and you're not doing it. And if that becomes a habit for me, those sense of entitlement, well, anger and bitterness come to dominate the way that I interact with others, the way that I interact with the world around me. Nothing good comes from it. You cannot enter His courts except with thanksgiving in your heart. And you can't have thanksgiving in your heart if your heart is dominated by a sense of entitlement. One of the beautiful things that we get to know as Christians is that even when things aren't the way they're supposed to be, even when people have wronged us, some of you have been wronged in really horrible ways. I don't mean to suggest that the people who've harmed you shouldn't have. What I am saying is we have to have faith that God can make it right. He can heal us. We can let free of all the angerness, all the bitterness, even though we don't deserve it. God has said, if you'll believe, I'll come into your heart and I will heal you. You and I were sick. We're spiritually unwell. We can see our sickness most clearly in our failed communities, failed marriages, and broken families. I don't know what family dysfunction showed itself in your holidays, but I bet it was one or another. We're sick and we need to be healed. If we'll believe, Jesus has the authority to heal us, and He is willing to come into our homes, though our dwellings are far too poor for such a one as He. We don't deserve Him to come into our home, but He will. We're made to live with others, free of pretense, filled with love, filled with God. Such a life with others is eternal living. Such a life with others is heaven. But we can't be saved into that kind of life without a habit of deep gratitude. Contentment and peace and joy go hand in hand with a habit of deep gratitude. To say it again, we must develop a habit of deep gratitude if we are to have eternal living. And senses of entitlement, senses that we're deserving, they rob us of any chance to develop that habit of deep gratitude. Let's finish with prayer. Dear Jesus, please come into our homes. Dear Jesus, please come into our homes. Come into my home. Come into our hearts and save us. We believe you have the authority to save us. We believe you have the authority to save us. We know that we don't deserve the gift of your presence in our home. We don't deserve the gift of your presence in our heart. We don't even deserve this life you give us, moment to moment. We don't deserve the blue sky or the wind or the taste of turkey and dressing. And yet you give, and you give, and you give, and you give. Oh, dear God, dear Father, thank you. Amen.